Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to the VDA podcast. I'm your host, Mike, and we've got all sorts of stuff to talk about today. And if you happen to come across us on YouTube by chance, I have timestamped everything we'll be talking about below. So if you're looking for something specific, feel free to peruse on ahead to that. Otherwise, we're just going to dive right in. Jay, how you doing?
I'm good. We're missing Gator today, so we're gonna just have to make do without him, but that's okay. He'll be back.
Yeah, hopefully he'll be back. I know he went on a field trip to the zoo, but we haven't heard back from him since.
Yeah, he'll probably get stuck in the monkey cage or fall into the bear pit, like Norm Macdonald and Adam Sandler and Chris Farley in that one sketch before they all got fired.
Classic Gator. Yeah. Cool. All right. So, yeah, excited to get into everything today. And first, we're going to start out with, let's talk a little bit about Kenobi. And spoilers for those who may be listening. If you haven't seen episode 1 through 4, make sure you go watch that and then come back and listen to this. Otherwise, Jay, I just kind of want to dig in. I mean, what really has been your thoughts so far about the series? I know last time on our last episode, Gator hadn't even watched it yet, right? So we didn't really even dive into any of that.
Yeah, I'm a Star Wars fan. Probably not as big, definitely not as big as you. I love The Mandalorian. I loved, the Book of Boba Fett. With this series, initially as it came out, I was really hyped for it. I was really excited, but this last episode felt a bit different from the rest. You know what I mean? It felt what's the word? Felt like a filler episode, and it was quite short too.
Yeah, I think it was only 30 minutes.
Yeah, 38 minutes or something.
Something like that.
And then they have at the beginning they have, the recap of the last week's episode. I feel like they could have just made it into, so far up into this point, they could have made it all of this into a movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they could have tied it a little bit all together. I'm still waiting for, I'm sure you are, we're waiting for Hayden Christensen. We're waiting for him to, do a face reveal but the one thing I am happy about, I know it was part of this episode, but it was more the episode before, was James Earl Jones coming back and voicing. They hid that very well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that was exciting. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see a Hayden Christensen flashback is what I'd love to see, where we have Ewan McGregor, we have Hayden Christensen, and maybe even Natalie Portman. I mean, dare I say? I mean, that would be so cool. But now we only got 2 episodes left. I don't know how likely that's going to be. My personal take, my favorite episode was the first episode, and I loved how they introduced Leia. I think that character is great, and I can't wait to see that character more in future shows or however they want to do it. But for me, it's like, okay, we've been kind of dragging this along, and I really loved the ending of episode 4 and how touching it was, or sentimental it felt between Kenobi and Leia, when they held hands. I mean, that actually kind of that sparked butterflies for me. But the show is called Kenobi. He needs to be the central theme of the show, and it just seems like they've gone away from that, and they've got a lot of catching up to
tell the
do.
Story.
Yeah, they've got a lot of catching up to do in a short time now in these next 2 episodes, and we'll see. I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Obviously, I'm going to be optimistic, but there are some bits and pieces that I really enjoyed from the last episode, and it's really controversial. It kind of seems like anything that gets put out there now. I mean, as far as the Star Wars community is concerned, it's going to be controversial. But what I loved was I love the hallway scenes. I love him getting out the lightsaber, starting to go into the montage of starting to learn his force powers again. I just wish we would have seen more of that. And hopefully we'll see more of that in the next few episodes.
Yeah, I hope so too. definitely.
For sure. Cool. So the next thing too, I know that we hadn't really touched a lot on this yet. Jedi Fallen Order, the
Yeah.
sequel to that, it's going to be called Jedi Survivor. That is going to be set to come out now next year. The trailer dropped at Disney Celebration. I actually made a video about that for a trailer breakdown. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly a game that I'm quite excited about. There's been kind of a lot of good theories that I've seen in the comments from people that have shared with me on kind of who the guy in the Bacta tank might be. But I mean, what's your overall impression of the game? I know Jay, I know you usually like to watch cinematics. That I think the first game you didn't really play, but
I
I
watch
mean,
the Let's Plays, because we're so
yeah,
busy nowadays, right?
for
We
sure.
can't play all the video games like that come out, or at least I can't. So if I'm at work or something, I put a Let's Play on the background, and yeah, I mean the cinematics in that game. I think we touched on. I'm not sure if we did touch on them in
I
another
think we
episode.
did. Yeah, we actually a
Yeah,
little bit. Yeah, a little
the
bit.
Darth Vader cinematic from the first game is just it's phenomenal, man. It's such a
Yes.
great cinematic.
It's amazing. Great cinematic. And yeah, I mean, it's really going to be interesting to see how they spin it because with Cal, like, he kind of finally has the storybook ending, which is really refreshing for him by the end of the game, where because the way his life starts out with Order 66 was really a traumatic experience, and that was just became a recurring theme that propelled him through the entire story of the game. Like there was moments where he would get close, like the next person he got close to after his master died, he got murdered. And even this whole arc, this story arc, trying to save this person who was kind of the antagonist of the game, him and Seer together tried to bring this person back to light, and just Vader murders her right in front of him. But
Yeah,
by the end, it seems like, okay, well, now he's kind of got like a little family unit and everything's seems like it's good. But and then now we see this trailer, and it's that whole ship that they had together is like being devastated. It's being crash landing on this planet. The whole time, like the guy in the background is taunting him, like, "Hey, why be a Jedi when nobody follows you? You're alone." And he's kind of making fun of that. Kind of seems like it's going to be that kind of a recurring theme for him, and that's going to carry through into the sequel. And then this guy in the Bacta tank, man, it's a real mystery. Obviously, I put out a video about who I think it may have been, right when the trailer came out. But I've seen some other really good theories as well. I mean, what are your thoughts kind of on that guy in the Bacta tank? I mean, obviously he's seems kind of interesting, very mysterious, right?
well, you know, my speculation always is, I said to you just kind of jokingly, I said, "Oh, that could be Revan," and I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely it's a bad uh, prediction, but I mean, I'm just as lost in the dark as you and as everyone else who's listening that's watched the trailer. We're all sort of speculating at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get super judgmental on like how likely a prediction is. I mean, if a prediction is possible, then it's viable, So like, if
Right.
somebody says they think it's Revan, I think, and I've seen that in the comments. There are paths that they could go to actually make that happen, and yes, there are paths that they could go to make that happen in live action. It's just whether they choose to do that or they
Right.
don't, you know and we're I'm not an executive for Disney. I'm not
Right.
on the I'm not on the team who decides what they're how they're going to spin the lore.
What's canon?
But
What's
yeah,
legend? Yeah.
yeah, but there has been some news about Revan that has come out rather recently
Oh, really?
that's very promising. Yeah, from a canon standpoint, particularly it was just revealed on the HoloNet Marauder podcast. It was revealed that Revan, there's new concept art that's out with him in
What?
a kind of hologram. So like if like episode 5 as an example, or episode 4, sorry, episode 4, where, R2D2, has Leia in this hologram, right? I think that's
Yeah.
the first time you obviously see it in Star Wars. We've gone on to see holograms so many times, but there's concept art out there, and kind of the idea is that they may use that to introduce Revan in the Acolyte series. And then also the caveat to that is their purpose for doing that will be to really start to tease now this new spin-off series they're going to do that will feature Revan on Disney Plus, and that's huge news if it's true.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe again, I think we might have talked about this in an episode before, but there was an interview with Hayden Christensen and this kid, and he's dressed up as Darth Vader, and he's having Hayden build like an X-wing to the best of a Lego X-wing to the best of his ability. And then at some point in the interview, the kid says, he says, you're like two of my favorite uh, Jedi's, and I think he mentioned Darth Vader, and then the second one he mentioned in the interview was Darth Revan, and Hayden Christensen was, he kind of he was laughing and kind of nodding. He really enjoyed the interview, but you could tell he had no idea who Darth Revan was, which is kind of cool that you see this sort of you see the fans, even the interviewers, this little kid who did a great interview, just how big this world is, legends or canon. It's just massive, and what they can do in the future. I'm just excited to see what will happen.
Yeah, I know. I've seen like even an article that came out. I think what it was like they were rating like the like popularity for uh like antagonists or dark side users within the Star Wars
Right.
universe. And Revan was clearly within the top 5. But
Oh, easily.
yeah, which really isn't a huge shock for somebody like me or probably you who
Yeah.
are familiar with the games. But
Yeah, we grew up
for
on it.
people who
We
don't
grew
play
up on
video
Vikings.
games, yeah, people that don't play video games, they have no idea. They don't understand.
Yeah.
And because it's never become canonized, there's no reason for them to understand. But in a video, probably my most recent one, I think I dropped, I talk about how, you know, if it becomes a business decision for Disney, they're going to make a business decision, right? Right. If they think that they can make more money selling Revan toys by introducing him in canon, then keeping him in Legends and having that be separate, they're gonna. There's no question they're going to make him canon, in the whole Kotar series canon. I mean, we already know that he's been canonized from certain aspects, but yeah, I mean, it'll just time will tell. But my gut on it is that Disney will come to a decision at some point that it will make sense not only to make Revan canon, but also to make the Kotar story canon as a whole. Just because if we look at what's trended, all the planets within the game, that the original game that came out, they've become
Yeah.
canonized. That force power Bastila uses, battle meditation, turns out that it was a
Oh,
force
really?
power that Mace Windu uses. Yeah, like Mace Windu is really proficient in it, but it was
Did he?
introduced in Knights of the Old Republic.
It
Like
was.
there's yeah. Yeah, so there's so many things from the game that were introduced from the game that have gone on to become canon, and it's just like so much is canon now that
Hmm.
it's just kind of it'll get to a point where I think like Disney's just going to look at it and be like, okay, like there's really not that much that conflicts or what we need to change to make it canon. And the remake that is coming out will actually be an opportunity for them to do that if they want. There's just like, some simple things like they'll have to change like the way that like kyber crystals are formed for red lightsabers. That's like one. And then I
Yeah.
think they'll need to change like the name of the Mandalorian, perhaps, that Revan defeated in the Mandalorian Wars. I think those are really the only two like definitive things that they
I
need to
forgot about
change
that.
to make the entire game canon.
Yeah, who was that Mandalorian? Did you end up fighting him in
You
the
don't.
second version? You don't fight him.
No, no.
Because you get that party member, Mandalore, or
You
not
do get a
Mandalore.
Mandalore within the
Yeah.
second game, but that's, obviously later, right? In the timeline. There's Mandalore the Ultimate, which I believe is the one that, if my memory serves right, is the one I believe that Revan defeated. And there's also one that's called Mandalore the Great, which they refer to somewhat in the Mandalorian, the show, when like
Yeah.
the armorer, you remember her? Like she talks about, or there's like the song, right? And they talk about like
Hmm.
the Mandalorian and Jedi Wars, and this is like for the first time that they've in canon they've actually mentioned that the Mandalorian Wars were even fought between Jedi's and Mandalorians. Which, by the way, and if you didn't know, Jay, like the Mandalorian Wars, like that thing, that was introduced in Knights of the Old Republic, right? And then it became canon through
Yeah.
the Clone Wars and Rebels, right? So that's just another thing on top of everything else.
Yeah.
Like so there's so many aspects of that game that people who play video games, they have no idea about, right? But there's so
Right.
many aspects of that game that have gone on to become canon where it's just like at some point, they may choose not to make the game canon or they may, but like what's the difference by now, right?
Right.
Cool. All right, well, that's good. I mean, I
Um.
think we covered a lot of Star Wars. I mean, is there anything else you're kind of in
Yeah, I
swirling
do. I
around in
want
your
to. I
brain?
just want to. There's a few things. So when you're playing Knights of the Old Republic, who is the guy? He's a party member that you get, and he's like working on. He's working for like a syndicate early in the game, and then he ends up joining you, and he's a Mandalorian, right? Correct?
Oh, I know who you're referring to. You're referring
Yeah.
to Canderous. Yeah,
Yeah.
Canderous Ordo.
Yeah. That
He
guy's. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's not like a Mandalore, right? He's not, referred to as that. But Canderous was you get him pretty early on, if I remember right. It's been a while since I've played the game.
He's a Mandalorian.
Um, yeah, he's definitely Mandalorian, and he, I, you encounter him if I remember right in Terrace, which was the original planet where, that gets like destroyed,
Hmm.
which, um, which is funny because like just bringing that up quickly. So like in the book Aftermath that came out after the Force Awakens,
Hmm.
they actually like go through Terrace. Like Terrace is in the book. This is canon. It's in the book, and they talk about like, oh, this like the city itself, like the planet itself, and then describing it. It had been destroyed, but they couldn't explain how it was destroyed. There was this mass destruction that happened. So it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, so all these people, they get kind of like so tight about like, hey, is this going to be canon? Or is this not going to be canon? Like, it's already canon. It's almost all of it's canon already. Like,
Hmm.
so yeah, no, it's funny, but no, Candace, yeah, I mean, he was a good character, I think, from a role playing standpoint. But as I think as we talked about before, if you had a guy with a blaster, and especially in the original Kotar, it's not going to be as balanced as having a Jedi with a lightsaber. So you always were going to be better off having, Bastila in your party or Jolie
Yeah.
Bindo or Juhana or, somebody, a combination of those four usually.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's something on the bucket list to do your next playthrough, and you have Canderous and HK, and you just beat the game with blasters. You don't even
It's
take up.
fun.
Yeah,
It's a fun
yeah,
way to do it.
that's
And you can do like kind of like a challenge where you only do blasters too, right?
right. That'd be funny.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. Yeah. So moving on next, I want to talk about tomorrow actually is coming out
Tomorrow.
at noon or 10 o'clock Pacific, your time. So your time is 10 a.m. is going to be the Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase.
Oh
Now,
wow.
there's a lot of games they're going to be talking about. I only want to talk about a few.
Hmm.
One is I'm going to want to touch on first, just real quick, is Starfield. So we've obviously talked about this on the podcast. I have a lot of different videos on Starfield. I'm very excited to see it come out. So some updates is it sounds like Starfield is, according to Phil Spencer, he's the CEO of Xbox. Starfield is now, they're kind of at a point with the game where they're really just putting the finishing touch onto it. That's kind of the way that he's spinning it. To me, it just sounds like, okay, well, it's just they have everything figured out except the spaceflight thing. And if you actually look on Xbox Game Pass, like, so if you go, if you play Xbox, you look on Game Pass, you go look at the game description, it's now indicating within the description of the game, it's indicating that the game is set to release early 2023, which is slightly different news than we heard from before, which was it would release at some point, at any point, either in Q1 or Q2 of next year. So some people have been kind of leaning on like, oh, all right, we'll probably just see a trailer. I think we're going to see more than that because, when Oblivion was delayed back in 2005, there's actually like a 20-minute presentation they went into for that game. I think it was, to be fair, I think the game was delayed after the fact. But yeah, I think we're going to see quite a bit from Starfield. Hopefully not too much, right? But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited for what we might be able to see.
Yeah, it should definitely be interesting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to. I mean, obviously, you and I, we're talking about Starfield right now, but also, Elder Scrolls 6.
Mm-hmm.
Another interesting thing that they were talking about that really caught my attention was procedural generation in the game, and that's something that we, I could be wrong, but I think I'm correct. We haven't seen that since Daggerfall, and most people that play Daggerfall, it's an older game, right? Like it came out years ago, but just the thought of procedural generation with the technology we have now, it could be very interesting, very very interesting, especially with like cloud gaming now. Like with No Man's Sky, you discover a planet, and that adds that to the galaxy where other players can explore. From what I'm hearing about that game, so the thought of being an explorer in the Elder Scrolls, in the new Elder Scrolls game. You find this land first. You find Hammerfell. You find parts of Skyrim first before somebody else could be very cool. But that's definitely a big thing, a big feat to accomplish. So, well, I that was just one thing that stuck out to me when they were talking about the Elder Scrolls 6.
Yeah, I'm
And,
super excited about that.
yeah,
And it would be really nice, wouldn't it, to see something? I mean, I
yeah.
think the last time we've gotten any information on Elder Scrolls 6 was, was it all the way back in like 2016? Maybe it's not that far back. Not nine.
There's been snippets of Todd Howard, you know,
Talking
in
about it.
interviews.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, there hasn't been like an official thing since that one that they did at, I think it was at E3. And many people have figured out that it's looks a lot like Hammerfell, and that the game, and they've kind of dropped some different things to heavily suggest that the game's going to be in Hammerfell. Obviously, I'm very excited about it. I'm gonna I'm gonna go on into many tangents about that, given that
Can't wait.
the news drops. I mean, we'll see. So like, the other game that's kind of on my radar right now
Mhm.
is Avowed, and I don't know if you've heard a lot
Yes.
about that, but the game is probably the closest thing ever since Skyrim has been made. It's probably the closest thing that we will ever have seen to that game, to Skyrim. And
Mm.
not only that, it's going to be new and improved. And so it's got a ton of potential. It's going to kind of be like this spin now that Obsidian's going to be putting on, like they do for Outer World, or sorry, like they did for Outer Worlds for Fallout.
Fallout New
Yeah, this is
Vegas.
going to be kind of that thing for Skyrim. And really, what they're doing is really, it's going to be, yeah, obviously like a sandbox game. And the whole buzz is that it is, from everything that's been communicated up to this point, the game is going to drop next year. However, now with the Starfield delay, they might, the huge shock and awe thing that they might do is say, hey, we're gonna bring this out, in Q4, and there's a ton of lore. There's a huge world. There's a ton of lore. The game, it would be set in a world called like Aurora, and it's kind of like the Tamriel of the
Skyrim.
game. And it's really the
Yeah.
third installment of the series of what was the Pillars of Eternity series. And there's quite a bit of different rumors about the game, especially, they'll have like improved battle systems, but like they also have like gods and deities, which, I love talking about, right? Where like they even do it from like a racial standpoint, like, so like you could be an elf or like a wood elf, or they have what's called pale elves, or if you're a human, you could be that, and then you almost like as part of like your racial traits, you could become kind of like an avatar of a variety of different gods. Like there's like fire god, there's like a god of smithing, for example, right? And then you can bring on about aspects of that god within yourself, which is kind of an interesting take. But we're gonna have to wait and see, obviously, how everything shakes out tomorrow. And I'm really excited for that. But I mean, yeah, let's just move on for now. So we've already seen like the PlayStation's version, more or less, of the Summer Games Fest, and to me, I would really refer to it more so far, you know, as the Summer Snooze Fest, from what we've seen so far. But there's one game I want to touch on,
Sure.
and you know, well, first let me talk about. There's one game I still think that there's a lot of potential with, and they strategically have left out of the presentation. Let's start with that, and that's Final Fantasy
Yeah.
VII Remake.
Oh, of
So
course.
yeah, we know that Final Fantasy VII, the 25th anniversary event, is actually coming out on June 16th, and from what I seen, I watched like videos from like Dreamcast guy. I remember I watched a video from him, and he mentioned that he was on Twitter, and he was talking about the big PR guy for them, from a social media standpoint, has really been dropping like heavy expectations for what to expect from this event in particular. And I know they
Mhm.
have kind of this little mobile game that they're probably going to talk about, but the feeling is that it goes far beyond that. And like honestly, if you even look at like the artwork and the logo that they utilize for the event itself, it's got Sephiroth there with Zack in cloud wrapped around his like black wing. Like they're gonna drop remake news, and I'm super jacked about that, because to me, from a JRPG standpoint, number one, my favorite game, no question.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the hype is definitely there. With the mobile game, I haven't looked too much on that mobile game, but yeah, I'm just looking forward to see what comes out from this, what they can show us. They typically they typically do a pretty good job. They've done a good job with the remake, and they're leaving us. They're leaving the second half, I think, or the second act rather of the remake, which is supposed to come out, right? If I remember correctly. So yeah, there's
Yeah, well,
going to be a
it's
lot
not the
of.
second half. It's not the second half. It will be the second part.
So it is the second part. It's just part
Yeah,
two. Okay, okay,
yeah. So you remember like when you leave Midgar, and maybe I have a
right.
brain fart right now. I'm trying to think of the city. Juna. Um,
Juno, yeah.
you Yeah, that might be the name of it. So when you leave Midgar for the first time, you go there, and then you go up to the inn, right? And then you
Hmm.
have this whole story where you do the flashback with Sephiroth and all that.
Yeah.
That's literally where the part two will pick up. So
Oh wow.
I think it's going to be probably 5 parts, a minimum, if you ask me, because the second part, if you want to call it that, of Final Fantasy VII was not until after the Temple of the Ancients. That's when the second disc happened, right? So they're not
Mhm.
obviously not following that path. That's like if you were like rushing through the game, that would be you. I mean, you'd at least have to play like I think 8 to 9 hours like straight to get to that, but it's probably closer to 12, I would say.
Yeah.
So in that game's like a 50, 60 hour game, right?
Well,
So
yeah. Well, it depends on how you play it. Like you could easily get 100 hours out of it just thinking
yeah,
around.
well, you could do. I mean, you could beat it probably in 35, 40, but you
Hmm.
like literally would have to be like a race to the finish. Like not doing any side stuff. Like and people would do that back in the day. Me, I loved one of my favorite aspects of the game is I loved like doing all the side stuff at the end. But the mobile game, I know you asked about that. That it looks promising. It's going to be free to play, but it sounds
Oh,
like there's some aspects that are going to be pay
pay to
to
win
pay to
or pay to
get.
win. Yeah.
And hopefully, for me to like actually be excited about playing a game like that, hopefully it'll just be like from an aesthetic standpoint, like what Tifa's outfit might look like or something. I'm okay with something like that. But if they go beyond that, then like,
Yeah. Yeah. And now that we're talking a little bit about Microsoft and we're talking about Sony. I just want to kind of go on a little bit a little tangent here with recent news with
go for it.
because you remind me of this Diablo Immortal coming out. Have you looked
Yeah,
up or seen anything about that?
I hear it's just a dumpster fire right now.
Oh man. Oh man. I don't know what Blizzard what Microsoft Blizzard is doing with it. There's streamers right now spending money on the game that so we don't have to, and I think a streamer, a big WoW streamer. I think his name's Asmon. At one point on his stream he was spending money so we didn't have to, and I think he was going to spend like $10,000. And I don't know if you remember in Diablo 3, there was jewel crafting Covetous Shin, our favorite character.
Definition.
Covetous Shin, he did all his jewel crafting, but the jewel crafting in this game, someone was saying, or he did the math that if you wanted to get all of the best gems possible for your character or something, and you wanted to get them fast, you need to spend close to $100,000 to get those gems. $100,000.
Yep. Well, this is what we were just. I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before it. I think it might have been our second podcast episode. This is
Hmm.
exactly what we were talking about. What a terrible direction for Blizzard. And the,
Yeah.
the unfortunate thing is, who owns them.
Yeah, I know.
Microsoft,
Well,
right?
Microsoft
So,
owns them now. So I would say that all of this that's happening was something that they thought about before the Microsoft acquisition. Like the release of Diablo Immortal, you can see it at BlizzCon, and
ah,
the guest questions where people were going up and they were asking after they had just showed this new mobile game. The first question was from the audience because they have the mic there and they can go up and ask questions. And the guy goes, "Is this an early April's Fool's joke, or will we be able to play this on PC?" And if the people that are listening have seen the video, how it goes, it does not go well. So yeah, just that's just the one caveat of doing a mobile pay to win game nowadays.
there's a
You
lot of
know?
people who play mobile games. I'm not one of those.
Yeah.
But there's a huge demand for it. And unfortunately, this is where, I think a lot of gaming studios look to exploit. Um, and
Yeah.
make money where they can. But yeah,
there's a lot of
and
talk about addiction too with these games, and it's just it's a very touchy, hot topic. So,
yeah, for
but yeah.
sure. So there is one game outside of kind of Final
Hmm.
Fantasy. There's one game that I think that definitely is worth talking about because it's one of my top 5 favorite games of all time. I mean, I
Hmm.
obviously put Final Fantasy 7 on that list, but that's the original Last of Us,
Yeah,
and um,
what a
what
great
an
game.
amazing game and an amazing experience that game was when I
Yeah.
first played it, and then replayed it and replayed it. um, So they're going to be making a remake of that for PS5. I have a PS5.
Hmm.
Um, I'm tempted to get it. I may not get it, but I'm tempted to get it. I know you and I, you and I are quite conflicted on the sequel, part
Oh,
two.
we're very
Um,
conflicted on the sequel.
yeah. I think the best way for me to sum it up, and I know this sounds stupid, but the best way for me to sum it up is I think I have like PTSD or something from that. Like I it was a great game. Part 2 was a great game, and when
Yeah.
I still have it like I in my living room, right? I have it like on
Hmm.
my entertainment center, and when I'm playing games, Part 2 it still stares me in the face, and I've always like looked at it and I'm like, "Oh yeah, well I'm going to go back. I'm going to replay it." But I just don't want to go through that again, Jay. I just don't want to go through it.
I mean, we're to be clear for the people that are listening, where we differ is I I enjoyed every aspect of the game, whereas you were
Bit butthurt.
you a bit butthurt to say the least, because I mean we're not spoiling it by now because the game's been out, so you guys have already played it or not. We're assuming you have at this point. We all know what happens to Joel. Um, there's and then it kind of goes off on the other story with the other woman, whose father was killed by Joel.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there the majority of the people that played the game did not like the game. Let's be clear. The majority of the people that played the game did not like the game. I am part of the minority that liked the entirety of the game. And it's a bit controversial. There's definitely going to be people that you might type in the comments or say, well, we could go on a huge long argument in the comments about this game. But my my thoughts on the game was I thought it was too short. I thought there needed to be more in it.
Interesting.
That's my only um one issue with the game. But I really enjoyed all the game. I enjoyed, Bella Ramsey doing the bluegrass songs, country songs whenever you'd find a guitar in one of the cities and she'd play. And,
Oh
I like,
god. That was my favorite aspect of the game. And then of course the way that
yeah,
game ended, of course, you know
she's
how
got a great
that made
voice
me
too.
feel.
Yeah. Bella Ramsey, if you're listening, maybe someday, you got a great voice.
So one thing that they announced at the Snooze Fest, the PlayStation Snooze Fest, was
We're calling it the
with
Snooze Fest, by the way.
with with the HBO show that's coming out, and you can dive into that. I think you've looked maybe more into that, but
Oh,
one
I've
thing I
definitely
know
looked
one
into it.
tidbit I saw is that
Yeah.
although Joel, the guy and the girl who play Joel and Ellie, although they're not playing those characters in the show, they will actually be predominant, like featured characters in the show. They'll be playing separate characters. They're not revealing who they're going to be, but I find that very interesting.
Oh, I need to make a correction. It wasn't Bella Ram. So Bella Ramsey, the actor that I'm talking about here, she's the new person she's the new actor that's going to be playing young Ellie in this show.
Oh, you're talking
The
about Game of Thrones girl.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll talk
yes.
about that. Yeah.
Um, So yeah, we have. I don't know if you guys remember. I think her name was Liana Mormont.
Yeah, it was
And
Liana Mormont. She was badass.
yeah,
She was
yeah,
badass.
yeah. She was a bat. She took like. I mean, we're not ruining Game of Thrones for you, Game of Thrones fan, but the way she went out was. I know people have their hot takes with the last season, but the way she went out was super badass. She killed like a giant undead, um, like the giants from the north. She just murdered one as she was killed. But yeah, super super badass. And then you have the Viper, yeah, the Mandalorian himself, Pedro Pascal as Joel. And there's been there's been this issue online where or this argument online where they wanted the what is his name? The guy who played oh man, it's
Is it
been
Jamie
so long.
Lannister?
Yeah, they wanted him to be
Yeah.
Joel.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. He would have
Yeah.
been great. He would have been great as Joel, but I think he also would have been great as Tommy. Um,
Oh yeah.
I think he would have been great as either character. Um, I'm most excited to see more than anything. I'm excited to see how they shoot that scene. Well, that'll probably be the first episode is when Joel, the zombies start, right?
Hmm.
And Joel's at home with his daughter
Hmm.
and he has to go find a way to escape the city and him and his brother Tommy like go out and
Yeah,
then
that'd be a great scene to
if
shoot.
if
Also,
yeah,
before we continue, the bluegrass part in Last of Us 2, it's Ashley Johnson. So Ashley Johnson, if you're listening, great voice.
yes,
But yeah, back to the scene. Sorry. Last of Us,
yeah. And Ashley Johnson, yes, she has an amazing voice.
such a good voice.
Well, I love both of those. I love both actors. They did. I can't go on enough. Um, but yeah, I'm really kind of chomping at the bits to see how they do that first episode, and um, I know that they casted the right character for Joel because
Yeah.
like when you watch Mandalorian and you see like that moment, I know it sounds kind of corny, but that
Hmm.
moment when he like takes off his helmet and has to say goodbye to Grogu, right? I
Hmm.
just can't wait to see how he reacts to having his daughter die in his arms. Like, oh my gosh. Wow.
Hmm.
That's going to be like get out the Kleenex. Like
Right.
crying fest
No.
around. But
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I'm certainly excited about it. And to be honest, the one thing I'll say about the sequel before we move on from that,
Hmm.
I think it was a very compelling story. I think that the direction they took was done very well. And although it wasn't, how I wanted them to do it,
Hmm.
like that theme of like continuing that dark despair dynamic in this vengeance, right? This like
It's all about
in the
vengeance and revenge. Yeah.
consequences that result of that.
Yep. Cause and
It
effect.
it
Yep, for
was
sure.
it was from a storytelling standpoint, it was done very well. Like me, I don't think the game ended too quickly because like, at the end and you kind of go through the arc with Ellie and then you almost feel like the game's over. And to me, this is how I felt like when she's like at
Hmm.
the ranch, but then she goes like back out on this like vendetta mission, right?
Hmm.
But to me, it didn't feel like it ended too quickly, but it was done really well. It's just, again, man, like the only thing I say is I have like PTSD. Like I can't pick the game back up because I don't want to go through it again.
Well, you touched on a theme that is familiar in media. It's something that you're familiar it's something very familiar in media that you take to, like Star Wars, like Luke and Vader, and
Right.
just Obi-Wan dies, and Luke, he's trying not to go to the dark side. And we get to Return of the Jedi, and Luke's just he's like basically he's like prime Luke at this point. Like he's pretty much mastered his mastery of the Force. He takes down his dad, and then Sidious being Sidious is just he's just overpowered. But that's when Vader kind of he has that there's still light in him. And that's where he just throws him down the the cliff, or down the hole in the new Death Star, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the theme that I'm trying to talk about here is Ellie, she gets all the way in, she's killed, like she's like a mass murderer at this point when you're at the end of The Last of Us. And
Oh, and
when they're
yeah, she's specialized too. I mean, she is proficient. I mean, Joel.
yeah,
I mean, Joel taught her so much, but
but
how
she's
impressive
quieter.
she
Yeah.
is. Like, I remember, I think the defining moment, I forget the guy's name. There's a defining moment, and you recognize it, especially if you play the game in the hardest difficulty, like the original, where like you're caught up in like Ellie for the first time. It's like when you play with Ellie is like the first time, and like you like shit goes down, right? And like you
Mhm.
have to like a bunch of zombies are coming in, and
Oh, when we're
like
talking about the first one, right? Last of
yeah,
Us.
the first game, and the guy
Yeah, I
who's
know you're
with
talking
you,
about.
I think turns out to be like a guy that's like a bad guy, and like she has to kill or something, or
Mhm.
Joel has to kill, I forget. But like it was such a hard thing to do. Like when you play it on the hardest difficulty, I remember I played it like 2 hours before I could do it. And
Wow.
when you some people are probably better than me, but who knows. But when you get through it, it's like, oh my god. But like it was such a defining moment for Ellie, where like she emerged as like not only this person that like could survive, but this person
Mhm.
that was like truly badass, and this person who
Yeah.
could go on to like she is so impressive in the sequel, like how what she's capable of doing. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, I loved that aspect of the game. Again, I just don't want to experience it again. That's all.
Well, to touch back on this theme of revenge and vengeance in current media, what I was trying to get at was, at the end where she has literally killed, all these different factions of people. I mean, at one point in the game, and there are three things in the game that stick out to me. I mean, Joel's death obviously is like it's sad, but me as the player, I think they needed something to drive the game forward, and the route that they took was through Ellie, right? And so you have
Right.
that. The second thing, when hate, revenge, the vengeance, when she sneaks up on the couple towards her arc before you switch over, and she kills that woman who's pregnant. You remember that?
No, she doesn't kill her. Well, no, Ellie kills the pregnant girl. Oh my
Yes, she
gosh.
does.
That's
Yes, she
right.
does. And she's done
Oh,
that, and there are people still. I think Tommy's still following her too, and you know, she's 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 basically become Joel at this point in the first game. Like Joel,
in the end. Yeah. Like
his daughter dying,
rampage. Like straight rampage.
rampage. Yep, his daughter dying to the cutscene where they're in the future, and he's with the woman, and they find out about Ellie, and they have to take her. Those two, Joel and that woman, like you're supposed to, as the player, right? You're supposed to kind of infer what happened between those years from his daughter's death to then, and you basically infer, because Joel's just he's an assassin in the game pretty much. You've assumed that he's killed a lot of people. Whereas in Last of Us 2, you actually see Ellie, you see that whole arc of Ellie up until that point. And then at the end of the game, when they're fighting, I think they're just so exhausted. They're in the water. Ellie sees that the other girl has like the smaller little girl that she found with the fire guy faction. I don't think it's the Fireflies, but that
Fireflies.
one. I don't know if it's the Fireflies, but it's another faction, the Island faction. And Ellie,
Oh, that's
yeah,
right.
Ellie
Oh
sees this
gosh.
girl taking
Oh,
care
you're
of this girl.
bringing back repressed memories, Jay.
Well, good, because the theme there is Ellie sees that this girl, the woman who killed Joel, is now looking after a younger girl, and that's basically Joel and Ellie from the first game. So there's a lot of, I mean, there's throughout all the hate that The Last of Us 2 gets, like if you really look at the game and the story, like I think
Storytelling is
that
solid. It's solid.
yeah,
It's
it's a
solid.
good story. Yeah,
It's a
and
good
I
story.
maybe in the minority, and I can get a bunch of flack for that, but we're American citizens and we're entitled to our own opinions. So that's just my opinion. I thought it was great.
Well,
So
hey man, we're still on the topic, so let's just stay on the topic for a sec.
sure.
How do you think they're gonna go about Last of Us Part 3?
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea.
I
And
mean,
I don't even want to try
how
to
sad.
speculate either.
How sad.
What do you mean?
Ellie going on this like rampage,
Hmm.
and at least Joel did it to save someone he loved. Like she did it out of revenge.
She destroyed her
And
relationship with her partner
and
and the
then
baby.
she ends up losing two of her five fingers that she needs to play,
The
the
fucking
left hand that
guitar.
she needs
Yeah.
to play
Oh,
guitar.
oh
And
no.
so sad. But
Yeah.
she's obviously incredibly capable still. So do you think we'll see kind of just them retell the arc? Because I think they're still kind of in the process of letting it sit with the fan base. Like even with me, like I haven't been able to replay the game, and maybe that's why they're doing the remake, right?
Hmm.
But I as a person who doesn't like the direction they went, I
Hmm.
really hope they don't do like the alternate universe route. Like I really hope they don't do that. Like this is
It's
this
just do
is
Game
like
Boy Tommy. Like
yeah,
they could do.
this is the
They could.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what
Sorry to
happened.
interrupt.
No, you're good. But um, yeah, I don't know. No, yeah. Share your thoughts. Yeah.
Well, what we could see is like we could see a Tommy story. Like what was he do? Like I mean, we know what he was doing during The Last of Us 2, but they could totally do a Tommy like
Like as a prequel thing
like a prequel thing up until the Joel incident and
in
what he
between
because
the
he was
events. Yeah.
yeah, he got a head start before Ellie. So I mean, oh, and Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, Jamie Lannister. If when they were showing, going off on a tangent, when they were showing the first kind of concept art and fans were showing him as Joel, that was really cool. But him as Tommy would be kind of cool.
I'd
It
love
would
to see him
definitely
as
be kind of
Tommy.
cool.
I
Yeah,
think he'd be great as Tommy.
yeah.
Um, I yeah. We'll have to see. I don't know who is cast for that. I don't know if they've revealed who's cast for that, but um, yeah. I think when they let's say whenever they make the part 3, what I think we'll see is them continuing the story arc potentially between Ellie and what's the name of the other girl? Do you remember?
From The Last of Us 2,
Well, yeah, the one that cuts her fingers off or bites her fingers off.
her name Abby.
Abby. Yeah,
Hmm.
sad story there too.
Yeah.
I think if they do an episode 3, it may be a story where by the end they unite together
Mm,
under a common
maybe.
goal.
Maybe
Um,
there's some huge conflict because they have, all of these factions in this broken world, and maybe there's just like a greater threat or something. I'm giving away free ideas to Naughty Dog right now. But
Yeah. Well, we
I
know
could
Abby's dad, like he
the
was like
Firefly Doctor.
Joel
Yeah,
murdered him.
straight up murdered him. What could you do though? Ellie was on the table. You know,
Yeah.
that's another great thing about The Last of Us. Is like,
This will come back
yeah,
to bite me.
you have a guy whose daughter, he watched his daughter die in the like she suffered when she died, right? She was shot and she choked and bled to death, right?
She bled to
And
death. Well, she was
she bled
shot, I
to death,
believe, in the chest or the stomach.
yeah,
But she was shot literally while she was in his arms, and he
literally.
watched her die. Very sad. Yeah.
And so you see that. I mean, as a father, I'm not a father, but I'm just only assuming, like, if you're a father and you see your daughter or this girl that is the spitting image of your daughter, and you've basically taken her, through this ravaged land, and to try and get her to, this group that supposedly can cure this virus and save everything, you know, only to his surprise that the cure is, they have to operate on her brain and study her brain. If you see her on that table, on the cutting table, like, how would you react? How like that's a great thing about the first Last of Us. It's like it basically it poses the question to the player. What would you do? What would you do?
I'd shoot that mofo in the head.
Yeah, most of us would.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
yeah, just great series, man. Just absolutely like 1 and 2, and then they had the
Yeah.
side story. I think it was like a DLC for The Last of Us. It was just like Ellie's part. It was like where she was in a mall and
Yes.
it was when Joel
Yes.
was what I'm talking about, where he was like
Yes.
injured.
Which is very challenging if you play it on the hardest difficulty, especially like when you get in the mall. Oh man. Man, that's intense.
Was that a DLC or was that part of the game? I don't remember.
DLC. It was a DLC.
Okay,
It's
okay.
like, when, because I think like she kisses a girl in the original game, maybe. But for sure,
She
like the
definitely meets
DLC,
the one. Yeah.
yeah, well, it's the DLC definitely, well, maybe that girl's just featured and they don't like reveal that she's like into girls until the DLC. But the DLC definitely goes into that. And then ever since the DLC, for sure, everyone's like, oh, okay, now we know what side she leans on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm excited to see what they come up with. It should be good.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to get into that tangent. That was fun. Um, okay, so moving on to
Oh wait.
next.
Well,
No,
yeah,
go
this is a good segue. This is a good segue because Last of Us is Sony, and something I was reading, I was looking up online is like we have Microsoft Bethesda, and then Obsidian Entertainment. Like Microsoft is also they own Blizzard now too. Microsoft is just gonna. We were talking the other day.
Yeah,
Xbox is just gonna kill it in the next couple of years. They have the alchemy, the recipes are right there for them to just make great, absolutely stunning games with the media that they own now, the franchises. So,
absolutely.
but one thing, what I saw online was just doing a little reading is Sony's has a potential partnership with Amazon, which from a business standpoint, you took business in college, Mike, but
Yep,
from a business standpoint, I think that's a smart thing to do because you have two mega companies, right? Um, and for Sony to survive, um, a partnership with Amazon, it might not be what people want, but from a business standpoint, it's very smart. It's a
yeah,
very smart move.
yeah. I agree. And if there's one thing that they've done well, and if there's one thing that will continue to serve them well, despite all this like wave of shit now that's going on with Xbox that they have to compete with, is that one thing they've done right is that they know how to find a compelling IP and partner and find an exclusive way to partner with it. You see that with Star Wars. Star Wars is one of the most popular IPs, if not the most popular IP in existence. I think episode 1 of Kenobi was maybe like 3 or 4 most trending thing on Google when that came out. You can also see it with the Spider-Man games. They have an exclusive with that and the whole Marvel scene. So getting in with Amazon makes a lot of sense because you know what comes to mind for me? Lord of Rings.
Oh, we're going off on a tangent. Yes. Yes. That, yeah, I'm excited for that. I'm really excited for the Lord of the Rings show that's coming up. Mr.
Yeah, and
Bezos, please give us something that we
I
want.
can't
Please give us something
wait.
good.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what they do from a game standpoint, like what kind of Lord of the Rings game they come up with.
There's so
I
much.
remember,
Like, there's
oh,
so much.
so much.
So much more.
Yeah,
Like
and it
the
would it
books
would
too. Yeah.
kill. It would crush, and it will crush. So I think it's very smart. Certainly a very smart move on Sony's part. So what else were you? What else do you want to talk about?
Well, now we're on Lord of the Rings, um, this is, we were talking a little bit about Pedro Pascal and Nikolai Coster-Waldau or Nikolaj Coster-Waldau. Sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, sir. But the new Game of Thrones series as well on HBO. Oh man, that
That'll be interesting.
there was an interview with I think there was an interview with George R. R. Martin. He was saying that um, I'm probably going to butcher this, but he was basically saying that what they've done with this show is it's going to be even better than Game of Thrones. Like they're really supposedly they're really taking their time with it, and um, they're sticking they're
More
sticking to the
true.
source material. Yeah,
Yeah.
which
I mean that
there's
sounds great. I don't know
yeah,
that it will be as popular, but
as Game of
that's
Thrones. Yeah.
my opinion. I think that the greatest story that to be told from a great Game of Thrones standpoint has
hmm
already been told.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know. I don't know the Targaryens coming to Westeros from Valyria is it's
yeah,
pretty cool too, man.
yeah.
It's
You know
there's
what?
a lot of content there.
You know what I would like to see. We are going on a tangent.
That's
This
fine.
brings me back. What I would love to see them do with a series. I mean, the Targaryens. That's an easy thing. It's compelling. You know, you can see the whole dynamic between back when dragons were at their their height, right?
Well,
And
it would
the
be right
Targaryens
after the fall of
ruled
Valyria.
ruled ruled everything.
Yeah,
But what I would love to see is going back to like Bran the Builder, going back to the time like back when the wall was constructed, back
yeah.
when
That would be
see
right
I
around that time, I think, too, right?
oh no, that's way far
A little
back.
bit after. Yeah.
Actually, way far back. I think it was like
Who was the guy that bent the knee? So that must have been before him then.
that was Stark.
Yeah,
Um, uh, yeah,
because
I haven't
first
watched.
Night King was speculation. The first Night King. There's a
Right.
lot of speculation, but the first Night King
Yeah, between the
is a
Night King
Stark.
and the Night's King, right?
Yeah,
Remember?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's the one who was the first one of the Watch who took on a wife that was part whatever they're called, liches or whatever.
yeah,
White Walkers. That's right. Oh God, man, it's been a while. Yeah, but I would love to see that story told. If they
yeah.
were to
And
do
we're
it,
probably butchering the lore, listeners. Like we're trying to the best of our ability, but we're just
maybe
excited to talk
I
about it.
don't think we're too far off. No,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
think
think
we're too
so
far
either.
off. Yeah, no, I think we're pretty spot on. But yeah, the other thing too is that there's that whole story. Now this is where I don't remember names, But there's that whole story with the Raven guy, and like him and like how he came to be,
Oh,
that was tied to that
yes.
tree, and he could be told in a type of story like that. You know, if you go
He was
all
the
the way back,
Targaryen, right? I'm pretty
he
sure the Blood
was. But
Raven
actually, you know
or
what?
the
He
Three-Eye
he
Raven.
might actually be told in this one series. That's if because if I remember right, he was no, actually no. I'm starting to remember. So this guy was actually related. He was Targaryen. You're right. Yeah, he was related. I think he was like a brother of the king, maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
do you remember?
I think his name had something to do with blood. I'm not Googling it right at this moment, but
I'm
I
gonna have to
thought
read.
he was, yeah, I thought he was a, shout out to Google. I thought he was a, you know, I thought it was blood something or, and he was like he was definitely a Targaryen
Yeah, he definitely
for
was.
sure. There's just so much content there that they like, I'm just excited, man. Like you could even see his becomings too. I think that's what you're trying to get at with this new show, like how the three-eyed raven came to be, and
Yeah, three-eyed raven. There we go. Yeah, so
yeah,
that might be something that would be compelling for me. Like, I do like the political thing, but like, I here's the one thing: I don't see myself attaching to characters in the same way I attached myself to, Jon Snow and Arya Stark and Tyrion
or
Lannister
Daenerys. Yeah,
and Daenerys. I don't see myself attaching to characters in the same way. Um, but I do have interest in like understanding the greater view of the universe and like or the Game of Thrones verse, I suppose. And
yeah.
yeah, but at the end of the
It's just so
day,
good.
yeah, where Lord of the Rings for me, like that feels like it's like whatever they come up with could be fresh enough where I do remember the original movies and I read The Hobbit, but I feel like they could introduce characters in a way that I could attach myself to, or I don't know, maybe it's the stubbornness I just have, with my
Mm.
particular taste.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Should be good. But oh yeah, this is a pretty good segue. With well, we were talking about Amazon before and all the series they're making. Um, there we have the show Invincible on Amazon. Steven Yeun's in it.
Yes,
Oh, he
love
and
that show.
yeah, great show. But there's been some 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 troubles going on with the guy who made it, Robert Kirkman. He made The Walking Dead.
That's
Um,
right.
and that's a whole nother tangent about Robert Kirkman and AMC. Like, there's a lawsuit. There's a lawsuit there. A couple of producers and Robert Kirkman are. I believe they're suing. They have a lawsuit against AMC for profits, and it's kind of ironic because the artists for Invincible are actually in a lawsuit with Robert Kirkman for profits. So yeah, there's all of us Invincible fans of the show, um, we we definitely we hope that this is settled or gets settled soon because it's such a great what is it, an IP? Invincible's an IP, right? It's
Oh, it is an IP. So what? So
yeah.
maybe take us through then. Take us like, what's the greater story about behind all that? Like him creating it, and what conflicts have really kind of arisen from that?
So he's being sued for an artist for allegedly duping him out of profits. Basically, the gist
Okay.
of it.
Kind of like the Batman thing with Tom Finger.
Um, I think a little bit.
Oh,
I
really?
think
That's interesting.
think so. Yeah, the granddaughter of or yeah, Bill Finger. Yeah, him getting the credit. Yeah, it's
Bill
basically
Finger. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah. He's the. I think it's Bill Finger. I could be wrong. no, it's definitely Bill Finger. Yeah. Yeah, his family was like really mad with DC because he didn't get the credit where it was, where it was it was
Well, he
deserved.
created
But
it. Yeah.
yeah, and his granddaughter, Athena, she basically right after the Dark Knight Rises, I think they settled it. I think are they? I'm not sure on this topic. I'm you probably know more Mark than I do. I would, but yeah, like the Robert Kirkman thing with the artist, it's in this, it's very sort of similar, which is it's sad to see. You want your favorite shows to run smoothly, and you want um
Yeah,
you
I
want
certainly hope the Invincible runs smoothly. I was really compelled by that story. In as much as The Boys has been great, we can touch on this a little bit. I've enjoyed, I think, the new season of The Boys. Warning, we're going to get a little spoilers here. The new season of The Boys is very good. It's not, to me, like Invincible. I think is creme de la creme. I think that it is a much better story arc. And yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see what comes with future seasons from that because yeah, I mean, it's so compelling the way
The
it
Boys, yeah,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but the boys
yeah,
comic, like there's a lot of stuff in there that they haven't showed in the show yet, and I like once they add that to the show, I think you might have a change of heart, which you like better, because they're saving
maybe,
a lot of really juicy things
maybe,
for the
yeah,
show.
that could be true. I mean, one thing that I find really compelling for a season one is having Superman come in and murder everyone, like just like
That's a current theme
like
between the two shows. Yeah,
murder, yeah, murder everybody, right? Just murder them, all the superheroes, like the best superheroes in the world, just suddenly get murdered and no one knows why. And then his son goes on to get powers, and then he is on the brink of murdering his son but can't. Like, oh,
yeah,
to me that's hard to beat. But
yeah.
I do like the boys, and I they they really go. One thing they're really good at is they definitely push the boundaries, so to speak, of what shows like that can do. And you even notice in like the first like 10 minutes of the first episode of this new season with the guy with the flying into the guy's urethra.
Yeah, a funny thing
not
about
not
yeah,
a scene for a
yeah.
12-year-old girl.
No, it's a very good. Well, the very first episode of The Boys too. I don't know if you guys remember that, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of gore. Uh, something that's something that's reoccurring with both Invincible and The Boys on Amazon is that like the producers, I believe they're writers. I know that they're producers and they do some directing, but Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, his best buddy, they've made so many movies together. They made that Preacher show as well. Like you could just look at IMDb and look at all the stuff they've made. But both those guys, they have something to do with Invincible and The Boys, which is great. Like what they're doing with it, and everyone that's involved with it, like just nothing short of spectacular. Just absolutely, absolutely great. So just wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so something else to touch on. I know you've been kind of in my ear about it. I don't know a whole
Mhm.
lot about Black Adam, but I know that
Oh
Dwayne the Rock
man.
Johnson is
Oh man.
smelling
Yeah.
something that's cooking.
Well, the trailer. The trailer to me is exciting because, I mean, we see Pierce Brosnan, and from what, hardcore, like, I'm nowhere near a hardcore DC comic fan. There are some of you out there that are, you live and die by these comics. But I know that a lot of fans of the comics are excited for Doctor Fate. We also have a snippet of, I believe, the Atomic Man, and Hawkman as well. And there's how they do after the credits of each movie. They always do like a little spoiler or some sort of Easter egg. But obviously, Black Adam directly ties with Shazam. Um, I don't know how they're gonna fit all of Black Adam's story into this movie, because I mean it goes all the way back to Egypt. He's like a high priest for Pharaoh, like Tut the Third. Like there's so much stuff to be covered. Like, is he an anti-hero in this? Is he like gonna turn out to be a full-on villain? So yeah, there's just a lot to just kind of unpack from this trailer. Like, is it exciting? Yeah, it looks great. Like The Rock. It's The Rock. Like, how do you not like The Rock? He's, it's
Yeah,
wrestling.
one thing I noticed from it was like he doesn't seem to like be like lawfully good, right?
Right. From a Dungeons and Dragons standpoint, definitely not.
I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, just the trailer. Something. I mean, it's definitely very interesting from like everything we see in the trailer. How they're gonna do all those DC heroes. I know for me, Doctor Fate is, he's kind of, you guys can get mad at me for saying this, but he's kind of like Doctor Strange from Marvel. But Doctor Fate, he's basically in charge of the timelines, if I believe correctly. He can see into the future, and I know in the oh man, what were those games? Man, what was that game called? Oh man, Injustice. Injustice. It's like the guys who made Mortal Kombat, NetherRealm Studios, I believe. They made the Injustice game, and the cinematics alone in that game are just, they're just a treat to all DC fans. So there's just a lot to expect. There's a lot of anticipation. There's a lot of hope for this movie, and yeah, I can't wait to see it.
Okay, Jay. It sounds like you wanted to, before we wrap things up here, there's some stuff going on in the MMO world. So, yeah, let us know what we should be caught up on as far as that's concerned.
So I'm talking to a very niche audience right now. Some of you might even be too young to remember this game that came out. EA owned it. It's called Ultima Online. I played it for years. I consider it to be, it's definitely one of the forefathers of MMOs. A lot of the people that worked for later versions of Ultima Online ended up to go work for other companies like Blizzard and do things, with them in World of Warcraft. But yeah, there's definitely been some red flags with this new blockchain MMO that the creator of the Ultima series in Tabula Rasa, and if as I said, I'm talking to a very small audience here. If you guys remember what happened with Tabula Rasa and what happened with that studio, and he made a game following that after, he made a new company, Richard Garriott, and this new company made a game which was the, quotation marks, true successor to the Ultima series, called Shroud of the Avatar. This game they kickstarted like $2 million or something for this game, Mike. And
Wow.
the game, like, in its like what we have now from beta to alpha to now, like it's a very weird game. You can own like real estate in the game, but the company behind it, I believe it's Portalarium, they ended up laying off some people, closing facilities. They ended up being bought or merging with another company called Catnip, and Richard Garriott and Richard Garriott and I forget the guy's name. His name's Todd. He's real big into Dungeons and Dragons. They're making this new blockchain MMO. They're saying they're not getting anything out of it. I believe that the journalist that tried to ask Richard Garriott about what's happening with Shroud of the Avatar, and the guy MMO Byte, by the way, has a video on this if you guys are interested in learning a little bit more. But yeah, he basically in this interview he just kind of dominated the conversation. He didn't want to talk about anything relating to Shroud other than what they have planned out for the next version of Shroud. And what I'm basically trying to get is I've been waiting for this guy to make a game or come back and make something that was similar to my first experience with Ultima Online. And from experience and the games that this guy Rich Garrett has come out with, it's just fallen short. And I would say I would warn people before getting hyped out about an MMO blockchain, which I don't know. I am so clueless on this metaverse. A lot of you younger listeners probably know a bit more, but I would tread lightly around this game. There's just if what we can learn from the past is he had these 3 games, and he had one of the greatest games ever made, probably, with Ultima Online. And there's EA has its problems. EA didn't give them enough money. EA just didn't believe in the game when it came out. The game came out, and like the servers couldn't handle how many people were playing at the time. And the game was in the Guinness Book of World Records for the biggest MMO game ever played at one point before, obviously with WoW and all these other games. So I would just I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. And also if we're going to segue a little, I want to segue a little bit into Ultima Online. There was this Reddit from a former GM, GM River, in the current producer or lead, what would you call it? Like the lead design person. Her name is Bonnie Armstrong, and there is this Reddit post of GM River and an EM, which is an event moderator in the game that hosts events for players, just kind of answering questions. And he goes into extent detail how these GMs and EMs they basically manipulated the game for monetary gain, right? So they would make a gold selling website, and they would be in charge of these EM events. They would print these rare items that only they had access to, and they would sell. And during the years that I played Ultima Online, you could kind of tell that there's something fishy going on here with these gold selling websites and these EMs and these items. And it's just kind of crazy that all of this sort of comes together and just shows how messed up it is, right? Because you have these people that directly work for the game. They are making a company to sell items from the game too, a third-party website too, mind you. And the person in charge knows about this, They know about cheating in the game with scripts and with third-party programs to allow you to manipulate the game, to allow you to just AFK, make money through gathering resources or something, or killing a mob in the game over and over for a rare drop. And she hasn't done anything about it. And it's been like a 15 to 20 year stretch of this.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and a lot of people, there are people in the game, lovely people, right? I've met some of people I still talk to today, right? Close friends of mine that have played it, and everyone's just sort of kind of not invested anymore. We've there just from all of this, what would you call it? Skeletons in the closet sort of Reddit post. Yeah, the players are really just, I would assume that they're sort of turned off from this. And a great thing too, well, they were owned by EA, but now I think it's like a subsidiary of EA. It's called Broadsword, that owns Dark Age Camelot and Ultima Online. Yeah, there are free servers made by, it's not open source, but there are free servers, and these free servers have a bigger player base than the EA Broadsword servers. Like they dwarf the real game servers. I mean, maybe that's because it's not subscription based, but Ultima Online now you don't need a subscription anymore. There's a free to play option. So all I wanted to touch was with this is just, there's just, I would be wary about getting involved with anything Richard Garriott. Ultima Online's a whole other thing. I might send Mike this Reddit post where you guys can just click and read it if it interests you. But yeah, that's all I wanted to touch a little bit. It's just, I mean, that is, what would you call that? Is that like corporate, like there's got to be a word for it, right?
Yeah. Well, in the business world, my background a lot is franchising, and if you look at it from a franchisor perspective, like if I was gonna open up a bunch of Dairy Queens, and
Right.
let's say I acquired Dairy Queen, okay, and
Right.
I
Thank you, Warren
wanted
Buffett.
to, yeah, first thing I'm gonna do when I acquire it is I'm gonna make decisions on what type of vendors I'm gonna work with, right? This could be people that control the website, that make money off of you. This could be people that do various forms of advertising that make money off of you. This could be people that handle inventory management and ordering, or HR processes, you name it, right? A lot of these situations when these types of acquisitions occur is there's a lot of like people clean house, right? So, and the reason they do that is because they obviously want new people that can be toy soldiers, but a lot of times what they do is they align themselves with they find their buddies or their friends, and they part of their networking and their relationship with them is, they just line their pockets. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who's more qualified or anything like that. So for me, it kind of sounds like really this is a situation where, from a fantasy football standpoint, collusion. Right? So there's some collusion going on, and yeah, I mean, it's kind of the way of the world. It sucks.
It's just, you play these games, right, and they make you sign up to an EULA, or like terms of service, and there's things you can't do. Like a big thing in MMO games was bots and scripts that would automate everything from resource gathering to doing quests for you. And they say that these are bad. You don't want to use these third-party programs to run these scripts. And they're in this Reddit post, the EMs and GMs, they're using all of these third parties to do these events in game, to like this client that they're given as a GM is essentially like a God client, right? It's not the client that they sell on shelves for the players. It's a client for them to make things happen in the game. And when you have these people printing pixels to sell on a website, a third-party website, mind you, I mean, the Better Business Bureau, like there has to be, I don't know. It's just very frustrating. Frustrating. It's such a near and dear game to my heart, and seeing this Reddit post, yeah, it just kind of breaks my heart a little bit, you know.
Well,
But
for
yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. For me, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
for the players too, I would say too. Like they're upset. Like the cheating in Ultima Online it's absolutely incredible, the amount of cheating that's still in this game for the small amount of players that play the official Broadsword EA servers. But the irony that I like is that there are free servers. There's a free server, I believe it's called UO Outlands, which I believe is a team of guys or one guy. He spent 6 years or something just reworking the entire game because there's so many different skills in Ultima Online, and you like if you're a blacksmith in Ultima Online, for the most part, that's your skills. You have 7 set of skills, and those skills could be, allocated towards crafting, or allocated towards being a thief and stealing from other players, or allocated towards being a warrior. Like that's how it works. And this guy on UO Outlands, there are a bunch of useless skills in Ultima Online, and this guy on UO Outlands, or this team, they made all the skills that were useless useful. And so to just see this team make the game better and redo all the mobs and the AI and the world too. It's a completely different map from Ultima Online. It's just incredible. So there's still a little bit of hope there. The players still keep the good aspects of the game alive, while the guys at the actual game just are running around like chickens with their heads cut off.
So, Jay, you would say the moral of the story for those kiddos out there who love the blockchain scene, be forewarned?
Oh, definitely be forewarned. Just give if you do your research, just Google Ultima Online, Richard Garriott, and then Tabula Rasa, and then Shroud of the Avatar. And yeah, if you go down the rabbit hole, you'll find some, find some pretty dark stuff.
Well, I love going down the rabbit hole. But yeah, I think that's about going to do it for today. So we're set to do the next episode in a few weeks, right? So we'll probably have final thoughts on Kenobi. That's number one, right? Of course, we'll talk a little bit about everything that's happened from what's been so far the summer snooze fest, but hopefully we'll have some exciting stuff to talk about from Starfield standpoint. Yeah, I mean, I know there'll definitely be much more to talk about. Anything else you want to? Any final thoughts you have, Jay, before we close things out for today?
Yeah, for the listeners, just keep. I mean, we will be too, but just keep trying to read the news on your favorite topic. Maybe suggest something that we could talk about. That you want us to talk about. And we're gonna be watching to the best of our ability. We're gonna be watching everything that comes out as well. We're gonna try to keep you guys informed. It kind of works both ways too. With you guys now, it's a great tool that we have. But yeah, we're just as excited as you guys are about all these different topics we talked about, and we're looking forward to the future.
Fantastic. I think everyone is. So awesome. Well, thanks for everybody who's tuning in. And thanks for taking the time to listen to the podcast. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys. Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you guys in a few weeks.